Welcome back. In this video, we are going to set up our hangman as well as the stand at which is going to hang. So the idea is that we will make sure that all of his body parts are going to be deactivated so we don't see them. And then every time we make a mistake in terms of the letter that we selected, we are going to add one of those items. So for example, activating the head, then the body, then the right arm, left arm, and so forth. Okay, and it will not be done by us manually here, of course, but it will be done by our code. And yeah, this will allow us to learn a bunch of things about arrays and other parts of C# programming. So what you can see here is basically that we have a bunch of planes that we repositioned them, and we are using two different materials. So we have two different colors that we are using here. Feel free to build your own hangman with as many body parts as you like, or even entirely different objects that you would like to use that are hanging or whatever. But basically you can build the same thing as I did here. And I'd say let's get started building that in our game. And therefore what we will need is going to be 3D objects. In this case, we're going to use quads. Okay, so a quad, if we look at the scene and we reposition this quad, we reset the position here, first of all, to 0, 0, 0. And now let's move this quad around and let's actually move over to the quad. So you can see that you don't see it unless you are in front of it. So basically a quad is just a one-sided piece of wall, so to speak, but it's only visible from one side, okay? So that's what this quad will do. It's not 3D. It's really just a 2D item inside of a 3D world. And we are going to use these quads in order to design our world. So let's position it at 0, 0, 0, and let's make sure that we change the color because now we can't really see it. And if we want to change the color of an item, we are going to use something called materials, as we have seen before. Okay, so let's go ahead and create a folder first, and let's call this folder materials because we always want to make sure that we have our items, our asset items, cleanly and tidied up. So here, let's now create a material, and I'm going to call this one hangman. So this material will be hangman, like so. And let me change its color to something grayish. Okay, like so. And then let's create another material in here, and this material will be wood. Okay, so I'm just going to use the wood material, and the color of that wood material would be a brown color. So you can select different kind of brown colors, the one that you like, whatever you want the wood to look like. So maybe such an orange brown or something like that. Okay, so now let's first of all take care of the hanging item. I'm going to call the first one base. Okay, and this will have the scale of, let's say, 3 times 0.7, and let's change the base's color by dragging this brown in there. Okay, so now you can of course move in here with your view. Okay, so this will be the base. If we look at the game, you can see that's where the base will be. And in this case, it's actually probably more useful to look at the game window instead of the scene window. All right, so now let's reposition the base, and you can of course play around with this Y value to move it around a little bit, like so. So hover with your mouse over the Y and then just move the item around. The same goes for the X value. So maybe you want to position it a little bit further to the right, something like 4 will probably do the trick. And maybe the scale, the base should be a little bigger. So here it really depends how you want the item to look like. All right, now let's duplicate the base. And the next thing that I'm going to build is going to be the shaft. So let me rename this to shaft, like so. And let's change the scale of it. So the X scale, something like 0.7 maybe, and the Y scale, something like 6 or so. And then let's reposition it. The X should be at the position of the base, and now let's change the Y coordinate so that it's around like this, I would say. You can play around with the size here, the Y coordinate, so it really is up to you how you want to put those items together. Now, of course, you can also use it here. So you can, of course, in the scene view, drag your items around like so, if you feel like it, and also duplicate them from here. And of course, you need to make sure that you have the right item selected. So now let's say we add the pole, which would be this top part. So you can position this pole at the top here like so. It can even be hanging a little bit like this. And the X scale should be a little bigger, maybe something like 5. The Y scale maybe should be a little thinner. So here 0.5, for example. Okay, so this should do the trick. Then we have to add a support. So let me add that support in there as well. And the difference with the support will be is rotation. So let's drag it down a little bit and then let's rotate it like so. Something like this should be fine. And then let's change its size. And you can use the scale tool for that. You can see something like this, a little thinner. And then use the move tool again and move the item around. If you look at the game, you will see that it looks like one item, and maybe this item should be a little higher. So in the game view, you see it looks pretty good. Now we can add our board here at the bottom. So this one is not going to be the pole, but the support. Now let's duplicate our shaft and let's call this one cord, and we can reposition it like so and change its scale, make it thinner. So 0.2 probably will be thin enough. And here the scale of 1 should be good enough. Let's position it a little higher like so. And then we can see we have it ready. Maybe we can even put it a little further towards the left-hand side like so, so that it's really hanging at the edge. So it really depends on how you want to put it. Okay, so this will be the basis for our hangman game. Now, of course, we need to have the hangman himself, and therefore we are going to use the other asset. Okay, so let me create a new 3D object in here, which will also be a quad, and this will be, for example, the head of our hangman. Okay, let's make sure we reposition it. So let's reset the position of our head, and let's drag this gray material onto the head. And now, of course, we can play around with the values. So I'm going to position him just at the bottom of the cord. So here, let's put him up a little bit like so. This should be fine. So the exact values will be different in your case. You can really just drag it around and position it as you want. So maybe we want it to be exactly at the center. So if that's the case, so if we want the hangman to be in the center of our game, it would of course make sense to change the cord position, as well as I believe it's the pole, right? This item here, we can change its X coordinate so it will be a little wider, and then change the cord to be at 0 for the X coordinate like so. And I believe this will be fine. So now we have our head, and now let's create the other body parts for our good hangman. So here the body, and the body of course will basically be just a super thin head and a long head. So the X scale for the body should be something like 0.5 maybe, or 0.6, depending on how thick you want to make him. And the Y scale maybe 2.5 or so. Okay, so let's do that. They don't have to be really connected. It's fine if they are not. So this will then be the body. Now let's go ahead and create the legs. So left leg, for example, like so. And now, so I duplicated the body, by the way. And now let me move that around a little bit further to the bottom. We can, of course, rotate it. But of course, you can also just add rotation values in here. So something that should work should be something around like 30 degrees. In this case, minus 30 degrees. And then we need to change the scale a little bit. So let's make sure that this item, and you can select the scale tool here. So this leg is going to be a little thinner and a little less long. Okay, and then position it, and let's see how it's gonna look like. Okay, this is going to be the leg on the left hand side, and let's change it just a tiny bit, a little longer, like so. And now let's actually duplicate this item. So let's duplicate the left leg, let's call it right leg, and then just change the Z coordinate to 30 instead, and change the X coordinate to exactly the opposite of that. So not minus, but plus 0.65. This will put the leg on the right hand side. Looks a little stupid. Maybe the leg should be a little lower. So let's position both of them a little lower. Let's go over here. Let's go to the moving tool. And now let's change the Y coordinate up. So let's say 1 maybe, or even 0.8, something like this. Let's see. Now it looks like he's not even hanging, like he's standing on top of something. So 1 is still a little too high. Yeah, just play around with the values. Just find something that you like. 1.1 should be good. Something like this. It's fine. And then what you can do is you basically can copy your both legs and paste them in, and then position them a little higher, like in my case 2.5, like so. Now we have the legs, the arms. So arms and legs are looking very similar to each other. So this is totally fine. So it really depends on how you want to do it. As I said, I think this is fine. If you want to give him eyes, let's do that real quick. And by the way, let's rename those. So left arm, and this one will be right arm. And if you want to give him eyes, let's create another material here. Let's call it black. And let's make it black. So now he will have black eyes even. So you can add another head actually. So let's duplicate the head, and let's change the color of this head. Let's reposition it, and let's call it eye, or left eye. Left eye. And let's look here. So you can see now it's at the same position as the other item, and we can't see it. So if we put it a little further to the front, then we will be able to see it. Okay, so now let's change its scale to something like 0.1 in all directions, and let's reposition the eye a little bit. So something like this. Maybe 0.1 is too small. 0.2 will be a little bigger eye, like so. You can see there is a shade. So here it really depends. Something like 0.01 should be enough, or minus 0.01 for the Z position of the left eye. And now duplicate the eye, call this right eye, and then you're golden. Okay, so the right eye of course will have the positive X position, like so. All right, and then we have the eyes. Now you could of course add a face and whatsoever. Okay, so you get the idea, I guess. So that's going to be it for this video. We have set up our hangman. Make sure to save your scene, because this was quite a lot of work to create all of these items that we now have in our project. And now maybe one thing that we could do is we could add those eyes to be part of the head. So drag them into the head, and then if we deactivate the head, the eyes will be deactivated as well. So let's see how that's going to work. You can see the eyes are disappearing as well, because they are inside of the head and they are deactivated at the same time as they are children of the head. So your eyes are your head's children, so to speak. Okay, this is enough of a video in terms of its length and in terms of what we build. So this is how you can create super simple prototypes with no graphic knowledge at all. You can see even me as an absolute newbie when it comes to graphical items, this still works, and for a prototype it's enough. Okay, see you in the next video.